Okay, so welcome to our lecture 11. Actually, it's 10 and 11 at the same time. So we're going to be a little bit longer, like we have 2 hours or something today. So I got some questions sent to me via email by students. So I said that I will respond in the lecture today. So we're doing all of that. Now, there are materials online currently from summer semester and God knows from whenever I have collected them, which do take you through some tricks of teaching reading and through some conceptual things. So there is stuff online in the modules, but let's have a look what I have prepared for you today. So we're very clear with that structure. So I know that we talked about it, right? That typically what they say in the curriculum, you should have 5 E's, whatever that means. And so 5 E's per se, as I said, concepts are fine, but once they get explained, they don't make intellectually any sense. But the idea is not to actually follow always what we are told, but to work critically with particular concepts, right? So whatever they have in the curriculum, they talk about 5 E's, you look at it with your critical mind, because at the end of the day, that's what you paid for as a teacher. You're not paid to follow, you pay to follow critically. So that's the first thing. I have basically reduced the 5 E's to 2 E's, which I ad infinitum, which is they go forever, for as long as needed, which is you worry about children's engagement, so that children actually, you engage them in ways that resonate with students' histories. So engagement means engaging students' personal individual histories. And then you do that, you can only do that by creating opportunities for children to actually evaluate themselves. Do you understand? The only way you can actually engage children's histories is by creating opportunities for them so that they can evaluate how they are thinking in order to achieve a particular outcome in their communications. So if your engagement will be, like we have discussed on LearnLine with Sue Anderson, I think is the person's name. So if she wants to now create an opportunity for children to do something of benefit for older people in the local community, there's a lot of lonely people, sick people, and so on. So if children are to create an audiobook for older people, so that's the sort of, so what she's gonna now think is how she's gonna create opportunities for children to evaluate why they should be doing this to begin with, and how they are gonna go about it. And those opportunities of evaluation have to be complex so that children can actually explore how well they are thinking about the task. So engagement is how you're gonna make it relevant to them, how you gonna show them that doing particular things is of value to them. And you do that by also supplying them with what I call resources so that they can actually explore in more than one way the relevance of themselves in the community and doing things for the community. Just before the class started, we talked about bullies and so on. A lot of times bullies are bullied at home. So what we need to do is start making children rediscover their heart. The earlier you get them, the merrier. So my project on well-being and resilience in little children in the literacy context will be with children of the age of 7, and we will be working with communities. So children will be doing things with communities and for communities. So this the evaluation is not your evaluation. I think the school system is really obsessed about evaluation without actually quite understanding what that means. So the evaluation in this slide is about children evaluating their own understandings of why they should be doing things, how they will be going about it. So if you prepare those tools, children can assess themselves in more than one way. Now, I want to say something really, really important this very second, which gets missed all the time. In the curriculum, we talk about critical thinking. What's critical? I mean, you don't have to actually know what's critical thinking, right? I'm not going to even bother to give you my definition of critical thinking, which is very simple, but because I've been working at it forever. But really, at, at the surface level, critical thinking involves questioning of sorts, right? Questioning. And what do we do with as teachers in schools? We don't facilitate students questioning themselves. We give them questions that drive them to a particular outcome. So students are not questioning themselves, and we question them, and then this is the end of the lesson. Now they should know because this is the outcome we had in mind, and that's why we devised those questions. That's absolutely wrong. There's no critical thinking here. That is just your way of driving, of bullying students. What we need to do is to create resources where children can actually ask questions of themselves. And this way we can say they critically engage in the subject matter. They critically engage in the task of the project. But you need to create opportunities for them. Without resources, they cannot explore how things are in the world and how they understand. They cannot reframe their world. And whether it's bullies or whether it's people who have kind natures, everybody needs to reframe their world so that it no longer looks overwhelming or simple or frightening. Right? So this graph basically is you create opportunities for children to actually see the reason why they do things and explore the quality of how they engage in the project. It's nothing to do with your assessment. Now, okay, I'll just leave this slide here. That will do. So we've done that. That the outcomes are about preparation of resources, enable children to explore what the outcomes cover. Right? So it's not like you give them those questions and now they've covered the outcomes. You need to prepare resources so that they can explore, they can actually engage in those outcomes by asking themselves how well they are doing, how they understand the task, so they can ask questions of themselves. So if you give children opportunities to actually explore how they think about the world and about their engagement in that world, which means how they go about the task they're creating, they had a chance to actually engage in those outcomes on their terms. In fact, they had a chance to achieve those outcomes. Otherwise, what we do, we just basically make them perform particular behaviors that please us. Whether they engage in the outcomes or not, it's another issue here. Theoretically, they are not in a conventional situation. What I also wanted to say is that when you assess students' tasks, so if they did create an audiobook for older people or for children in the hospital, what you do, you have your learning outcomes for the year, you know what resources you prepared, and then you look at children's task and you look what kinds of frames of reference they engaged that show you a reflective engagement in the task. I call them frames of reference, but basically if you look that they had to show sensitivity to cultural differences, you have it in your outcomes, right? Well, have a look. Does the resource that they create, does the audiobook or whatever they will be creating for older people, for other children, does it show that they have cultural sensitivity? So that's how you do it. Is the resource that children have created reflecting the frames of reference that are parts of your outcomes? It's very simple. And you don't, if you have 30 outcomes and you actually accounted in your resources for 30 outcomes, it doesn't mean that children, for their purpose, engaged all of them, because some of them might have not mattered, and the very fact that they rejected some of them, it's still an inclusion. because they didn't see it as relevant. But you will have to see how thoughtfully children actually created or the product they were creating, and you assess the thoughtfulness in relation to the curricular outcomes, but not in relation to behaviors that you have in your mind, but in relation to the kinds of frames of reference you can see children engaged and how they actually link up with the outcomes. And this is how you actually check the depth, the complexity of a student's project. And whether you do it for little children or for bigger children, you can see that the outcomes are quite complex. I'm not going to go through this class again because we have done it last. So what we did last time we saw each other, the question we started with was, how do you start planning a unit of work or 5 lessons for children and so on? And we've done it, and if you can't remember, you go and watch that video. So the first step is, how do you start? The second step is, what do you know? It's very, very important to ask yourself, what do you know? Because you then create a checklist so on the left, you know how to start. You have these outcomes. You know that you have to prepare resources that they cover them and so on. But on the other side of the page, you write to yourself, what is it that I know? You do not begin with the lesson. You do not play, Anya. Well, when I said, well, you might as well use the word blah, 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 because if we don't define the terms, we don't know what we're talking about. Because if a person defined play, we would have noticed that I actually had play right through. So now in relation to what we know, what do we know? What do we know? So think about play, think about how I talk about the play. What is it that is actually at the core of the pedagogy that I was teaching this semester? It's the only thing you need to remember, really. Children are exploring in the world how they are faring. So the play, the way I define play, is children explore their own power. The world is about your own power. You've got to be aware what power you have. Literacy is also about acquiring power, and power in a positive way. Right? If someone comes up to you and they're 40 and they can't do particular things, or they do them in a sort of simple way, you look at them and you think to yourself, whatever you think to yourself, but in polite words would be, they cannot annex any of the dispositions they should have by that age. And they are aware that they are powerless. So they come to you and say, could you write it for me? If they have other powers, they can pay you, but some of them can't even pay you because they don't have any other powers or lesser range. So everything is about actually annexing power or exercising power. So how are children to be aware of their power unless we actually give them opportunities? So the whole 5 activities, reading activities, are about enabling children to explore and annex their own power. You could call it play. What do the 2 bears when they are playing? What do 2 little cubs are doing? I can do that to you. I can do this to you. I can climb this tree. What do you think these actions are about? Falling? It's about exercising muscles, being able to spot the tree, being able to sense the tree, know how the paws feel on the tree. All of this is about exercising your power, because one day you might actually want to get some honey from the tree. You don't get the honey, you don't get to eat. You die. Right? So all this, that's what I'm saying. Very often, especially early literacy, is surrounded by the discourse of babysitting. Right? The sort of average discourse. But critical pedagogy does talk about children power. But for some reason, it's really, people find it difficult to integrate those terms. So what is it that we know? That whatever we do, we have to give children opportunities to explore their powers and expand them so they are more powerful. I mean, you yourselves in your assignments write that literacy is to give children power. Well, there you go. So what were we doing? Why were we doing these stupid things like speech to text or avatar? Why was I doing that? I mean, I wasn't doing probably speech to text and avatar last semester, in summer semester. I just look for things. And why I accept them is not because they're ICT. People think I do. Anya does ICT. No, Anya doesn't do ICT. What Anya uses ICT because what? Because on the avatar, if you type A, the avatar will tell you A. If you type AB, the avatar will say AB. And it's somehow, I think, more interesting than A for apple, B for banana, and all of that. I mean, I'm not discounting those things. What I'm saying is, if you type and the avatar talks, it's highly empowering. Because the child doesn't actually have to know the keyboard. It can just types and sees what happens. Types and sees what happens. And the avatar responds instantly. Doesn't wait for the teacher or a peer group person to actually read it for them, or mommy when she drops the dishes and runs to read the 2 words written by a child, right? So I'm not using these resources in order to entertain myself or to tell you to do the ICT. It's because it's about power and it's about empowering. Children can explore on their terms as they wish, and we will look at it. So these are the sort of things we already know. So I'm not saying to you that speech to text or avatar are the only things to use, but the only thing to use is everything that enables children to explore their own power on their own terms. Explore and expand. That's what should be used. And that's what I will be looking for in assignment 2. If you push children to a particular outcome that you have envisaged and you think that's the path, that's a low-level assignment. So sometimes I get 5 lessons in sight words. I don't know where people get this idea that for 5 weeks or for 5 hours or for 10 hours, because very often literacy classes actually, sometimes they are 2 hours, actually not just 1 hour. You're going to do that. I don't know. I don't think your dog would put up with one exercise for 10 hours. Mine didn't. Because I had images sometimes, because my dog was a really big boy and didn't want to walk in front of, next to me. He was always half a meter in front of me. So I tried to get him out of that, but no way. But you know, police dogs do that. Police dogs actually don't put the face on the knee. Police dogs are always a little bit ahead of the policeman. That little observation, a little bit of expansion, critical thinking, and I stopped torturing my dog. Anyway, the point is I'll be looking for the empowering things. Now, so that's the first thing. So we've got some tools, and we'll be looking at those tools today, and we also will look on the bottom which says online games. We'll be looking at how to actually work with games. So the game is not a reward, it's not a bickie, it's not a good boy, you've done well, now you can play some spelling games. The game is actually a resource to be integrated into reading activities as part of the journey. So if you do lesson 5 or lesson 4 or lesson 1 by using spelling games, that's almost a fail. But if you integrate spelling game, and I'll show you how, as part of the feedback loops inside of the activity so that children feel supported, that's a high distinction. Do you see the difference? So if you have a child, with one of our students has a child with problems, right? If we give that child an activity per se, and we say, do it 300 times, the child is going to shoot themselves. It's just crazy. But if we give the child tools to explore options they have, then those games become options. They are not drills anymore. They are tools on which children can draw to do the big thing. Now, you will never hear it from anyone else. Nobody actually, well, not nobody. Nobody on average understands the use of technology in this way. I come from the very, very pioneers of technology in Australia. And I've published, and I was married actually to a professor who was the pioneer of technology. He was the first professor in technology and language teaching in Australia, and he was in that first appointment was made by Bond in Bond University, because that's when they that was the university which was looking ahead. But typically, people reduce technology to drills or talking on Facebook, right? That's just so unimaginative. Now, one thing that the paragraph in the middle, please do not write things like, the trick is to get children to do, I'll get children do this, I'll get children do that. That's just a fail, straight away. I mean, I'm not going to fail people that quickly, but it's the way I read it, it's no brownie points. I'll get kids do this, I'll make them do this, I'll get them do that. As soon as I read it, I see that the teacher doesn't know how to teach, or pre-service teacher doesn't know how to teach. The children are not dogs or monkeys. You don't get them do that. Now, some of you have heard of Vygotsky, or now from me you heard of Bakhtin. Whoever it is, you know the sociocultural theory, or at least some of those understandings. And everybody will tell you all action is goal-directed. Doesn't matter what you do, you have a purpose. Well, you need to integrate that purpose. So basically, like, for example, we spoke on LearnLine with Sue Anderson, and first she said, what was first? She will be doing particular thing with the children. And I said, well, you can't. You've got to get them on your side. So the first lesson is how do you make activities in your classroom relevant to children? How do you get them on your side? Cannot be, today we do family, right? And I made a comment, because I come from the second language teaching area, and for some reason we're a little bit ahead of literacy in some ways. I don't know. I mean, we used to have it in the 70s. Today you do the movies, tomorrow you do the zoo, and today we will be doing the family. None of it is connected. And then people would say to me, oh, curriculum mentions it. Curriculum mentions it, but doesn't tell you how to connect it. It's you who has to connect it. It's not like, it's schizophrenic. If you want to teach children ADHD and you want to teach them to be schizophrenic, that's what you do. Today we do family and tomorrow we do at the zoo. Practice makes perfect. After about 8 years of that, they will be schizophrenic. Because opposite to schizophrenia is connectedness. Seeing relationships, patterns, working, connecting different patterns. Right? Well, you have to start. You have to teach by example. So there are different ways in which you can actually seduce children. Right? Different ways. The principal has a birthday, but then we do something about it, don't we? We love our principal. Well, I hope we do. The ones I work with are totally lovable. What else? People can't find the path to our school. They can't find our school. We better create a map. You get them because you have this emotional curriculum, which is the well-being curriculum. You need to get children emotionally involved in the task. We used to call it motivation. Stupid thing like today we play with IT. Today, guys, we got a free hour. Just gonna play with IT. Remember how they were talking to the speech to text? Just play with IT. It's just all free. They don't see what you see. We're just gonna explore different programs. We're gonna have fun, guys. Today we do no learning. When they are 8, they will know you're lying. But when they are 6, 5, or 7, they'll believe you. Right? The idea, you have to be a smart mother or smart father. Get in touch with the community. People come here and tell you or show you videos, or you go to them and have a look how people live. You go and visit Red Cross, and Red Cross will show you what the community looks like, and then your children can actually, you find smart way of making children do things for those people. You know, if children see sick children in hospital, it's gonna touch their heart, but you can create a lesson of how you're gonna help children to feel touched, so they will listen to these children's stories. Create a story yourself, wrap your own children in some bandages and something. I mean, you can make it up. I mean, I've got children, I had students who were making up things as well. So what you can do is a story that before I used to be really angry with people. I used to be very strong, and now look at me. I so look forward if you could actually do something. So a bully hears as a reflection now. I used to be like that, and now I really appreciate someone visit me. You need to provide tools for children to reframe their minds. And to make explicit connections between who they really are and the society. So lesson 1 is not a simple lesson. Ain't gonna be, we're gonna get them into talking about families. Now, I always say, this is the wrongest, the worst topic you can think of, because half of your children don't have families, half of them have broken families, and so on. You're going to have probably out of 20 children, you will find maybe 5, 7 that have a family that you actually find in a pink book, right? So you're going to have a family today, and we're going to break every child in class. Because 6-year-olds write actually emails to their mothers who live in Tasmania. You got to think a little bit. If you want to do family, think why the curriculum put family, because they want you to know the connections between father, sister, auntie. Well, you can do it with animals, and then you can extend it to the community. You can show how Aboriginal people call everyone auntie or sister. You can think critically and also in an inclusive way. Family doesn't mean family, it also means love. Well, expand on it. Show that you're on Facebook, everybody is on Facebook. That's why people don't finish assignments nowadays at every level, undergraduate, postgraduate, including me. Because we spend half of the day on Facebook, and what do we see there? A bear making friendship with a dog. That's family. If love is not just genes, but love what connects families, that there it is, family. You all must have seen the cat saving the little boy from the dog, right? Even my mother at 85 saw it. She told me the story. I had to tell her, look, it's been on every channel, on every Facebook, on every bloody thing that I can think of. Right? Bring it to the classroom. Ask them what that means. Expand it. You don't make the bully feel bad about himself. You work on reframing the perceptions bullies bring into their life in an expansive way, so that they can see that even the cat knows what's right. Okay, so that was your lesson, activity 1, right? Complicated. You're working with little beings. Now let's have a look what we did. So an example, remember how we did? So for lesson 1, I gave you some examples. One example is here, just playing with IT, basic playing. I'm not going to cover it because we've done it before. Now, when children don't have ideas what to do, right? You could play in different ways. I use the play now in a critical manner. So for example, what do I have here? We could play with IT, which is the other thing I showed you, or we could go here. And I'll just, okay, so I'm in trouble now. But I'm gonna fix it. I forgot that my computer doesn't connect to the university network because, I don't know, it just got sick. Either my computer got sick or the network got sick. Otherwise, something got sick. But we're going to fix it, of course, as always. But what is it that I have here? Any idea? Examples of games. Simple games. They're literacy games. But you don't tell them that. What they do, what the kids do, are just doing particular things and exploring the world. So this one is actually a ready-made game which was online. It's about a dog, the things you can do to a dog. You can wash it, eat it, bathe it, and whatever, you know. So so kids can play and whatever. This game I made up, and I actually am gonna show you this particular game. Because I want you to see what you can do yourselves. So it says you've got to run it to actually get the links, unless you copy and paste. Whatever I wrote, I did it a few years ago, so I can't even remember what I wrote. A student of ours created pictures of the community. How she did that, I have no idea. Amazing. We have amazing students. Don't take me wrong. You are amazing students too, and the summer semester also was amazing. So, for example, so she created this community. And look, find us in New South Wales. Obviously, it's a game. Find us. So you can write find us. Depending on their level of English, you can put it either as a question mark. I mean, you can think of, you know, but where they are, you could create a map here, a picture of the map, and children will click to find out where it is. And you play so for example, the map might have New South Wales painted black or something, or yellow or something. And then they click here and they go to a game. I'm not going to go there because you have this PowerPoint now on Learn and you can click it yourselves. But they go, and the map it's an interactive map about states. So they're learning about Australia. What is where? It's going to take them a good half an hour to actually work out how that whole thing operates or not. Then another thing I did here. So I don't know, just explore those links. I've done it a few years ago, so I don't know where these links go. But what I actually did, do you see, I couldn't do it any other, I mean, I could do it another way, but my students weren't aware of how to find things. So you see those arrows? Each of these arrows is a link to a game. So you can explore the community by having a look, what's that? And that's a garden game. What's this one? It's a Who Am I game. You know, there's a stupid thing, some stupid games, literacy games on, you know, I am 5 and I wear hats or something. I don't know. This is something about the shopping center game. I don't know. This is about jobs, and this is about cooking, and this is about, oh, this is a nice one. It's they're building a hospital. So for the community, so it's really nice. There's no words there, but children can talk. You actually expand their vocabulary. They can put furniture around and all of that. Now, I'm not saying to you this is the way to go, but this gives children tools to think what they would like to talk about, or how, on the basis of this, you get their brains going, their minds going, and then we can actually build on it, and children can create an audiobook about their own community, or a resource about their community. But this is just a way to show you how you can actually warm up kids. So it could be through a game, so particular games about children, an entire community game. This is a cooking game. I love that cooking game. Have you ever seen those cooking games online? You haven't? Okay, I will show it to you, because when you see it, you might actually think, oh no, we couldn't do that. But remember, you are intelligent creatures and you will be mothers, and maybe some of you already have been mothers. You got to outsmart those little and bigger beings, right? You just have to outsmart them, and I'll show you how to outsmart them as soon as I connect to the internet. So when the game is difficult, has a lot of words beyond the level of your children, what do? You don't do the game? You focus on what matters. And this particular game is really cute because what matters is in red. So there's a text, lots of it, and then and then and my computer is not detecting the internet, which is really helpful. The reason why I can't go to the main thing now, because I'm doing the movie from my computer, so that's why. Anyway, we're gonna give it time. So it's a game, it's a complicated game, but actually, if I make the picture bigger, just for our sake, you see this hand? See the hand? This hand moves, so you can pick up the bowl, open the fridge, set up the oven on a particular temperature. You can go and look for pots and dishes and all of stuff. So all these things open, right? So the hand will open this thing, you know, whatever. And this is your stove here, I think. Oh, this is your table where you put things when they ask you. So, you know, you can do the bowl. You don't have to read the whole thing. We can explain this as instructions, and you can just look for the bowl. Right, and the bowl is here, so you can look for this kind of a bowl, right? And the whole thing takes you through a recipe of making. This one is macadamia biscuits, but there's like 5 million of them there. They're just most amazing things. So all that is online, and a game by itself is meaningless. But if part of your activity is now you use particular games to warm up children's minds, to get them going, to give them things to think about so they can actually create, you know, if they want to create a story for children in the hospital, what will we write about? We don't know. Okay, well, let's explore. Let's explore. Let's click here, click here, click here. You spend an hour playing games, but not playing games, different games. They are thinking now. You could actually go on the whiteboard and start writing keywords and whatever, even if they are pre-literate or semi-literate, it doesn't matter. There's always something they learn, and they explore what they could be talking about, and then they could use the speech-to-text program where they actually tell the story, and it gets recorded. And then you go through the other activities now that make the audiobook polished and looking really like a proper story. Okay, so per se a game makes no sense, but a series of games that are to warm up children is a completely different pedagogy. It's not drilling. This is now an exploration for creativity. Okay, hands up. Are we on the same page? You got it? Okay. I am covering all the children today. So now, whatever you do, milk it. It's a principle. And I'll show you how. Typically what I get is from students who say, and then we will do a cover for our book. So the first thing we'll do after we've agreed on the story, we will do a cover. So we will draw it. It couldn't be worse. What is it teaching? Nothing. You get the behavior, you can put it online, your children drew it. Absolutely no expansion. You've got to think, what is a cover and how can I expand that concept of a cover of a book in a million ways so that the kids get a lot out of it? Not just reading pictures and comparing different pictures, it's also about text and how can we actually get out of it a bit of literacy as well. You know, so you got to think. So have a look, some things I suggested. So first of all, you give them a concept of a cover of a book, right? So what do we need? So what does the book have and so on. Now, notice I have chosen the Lapps, which is the people of the north in Norway, and they go to Siberia all the way. Point is, choose your resources as we spoke about it in an inclusive way. It's not always about little white children. And even though we have Asian students here, I can guarantee you that a lot of Asian students who go to schools, they choose little white children. Because there is this genre in Australia, but we are still little white children. Even though 3/4 of our classroom comes from everywhere. Right? So you somehow develop the concept of there's books need. You can actually go, I didn't do it here, Google Images. And look at this, I superimpose Aboriginal stories as well here, because Google Images didn't have Aboriginal stories, it just had little white children. So you type something meaningful as children cover book covers or children books, and then they go. You ask children what to type, and this is some Aboriginal book covers. But here, you milk it. So what you want to do in your, I mean, these resources, you create them in a more orderly way. Because I wanted all of them on one slide, it doesn't look very orderly, right? But they are ordered. So remember that every lesson of ours has to have what, when, why, and how. And it has to have an achievement. So when we had Sue Anderson, who suggested, was a really brave girl, very brave student of ours, who posted particular lesson idea, I'll ask them questions. I think it was Sue. I'm just blaming her for everything now. But Sue, sorry for that. Anyway, I don't know whether it was her or not. But my question was, so you will ask children all these questions, and I'm not sure whether this is a good pedagogy to ask them these questions without giving them tools to actually explore themselves first. But what's the achievement? What's at the end of the day? They walk out from your class feeling like, oh yeah, tomorrow the teacher will tell us what to do next. How do you account for the well-being curriculum where tomorrow the teacher will tell us? There's nothing motivating. There's no resilience, there's nothing. That was great. I can't wait till we do the next part of our book. That's a different attitude. All right, so you need to think about that. Now, when you create your examples for children to explore, I did it last night, so I just cover books or book covers. Make sure that you have contrast. I really was doing this at 11 p.m., but that goes to show you that all my resources for you are always just the last idea I had. I never teach. I mean, whatever I taught last semester in the modules, whatever I think out today is produced at 11 p.m. Have books which are adult books and children books. Because if you want to teach literacy, and part of literacy is what you call, after Mary Calantes, you call it multiliteracy. So there, let's go with that term. If you want them to read pictures, then they have to know the difference. How do they know the difference between the children book cover and the adult book cover? So you want them to actually explore and talk about it. And if they are creating a book for children in the hospital, they want a particular indications of that being a children's book to actually be present. But you don't give them just children's book covers, because meaning functions by contrast. You know what's black because you've seen white. Your eye has contrast. Your eye is detecting contrast. It's not detecting colors, it's detecting contrast. Okay, so I'll show you the thing I created. Is that working? Oh, it's working. We can go there, hopefully. I created it. Come on, surely you can take me there. Okay, it's a story, but what is on the video, on the YouTube. That story is on YouTube, by the way. But it's a long story. It goes to show you what a fast internet we have in Darwin, Charles Darwin University. Look how many slides
Traditional
I have.
Chinese Tales Series. This presentation was made by Anya Lyon from Nihao High.
All right. 5 slides, of which the first slide is a sort of title. You can make it differently, right? But look at this. How can I make you hear it? You can't hear it. People on the video can hear it. You can't hear it. So I'll tell you what I'm saying. So
The Tale of Two Pots.
Chinese story, right? The Tale of Two Pots.
Once upon a time, an older Chinese woman had 2 cans. One happy one and one not happy.
Unhappy can.
The unhappy can
Dripping water.
Complained that it was leaking.
The unhappy can is leaking.
But the older woman replied,
the water
the water is not getting wasted.
The water is not wasted.
The water drips On my flower bed.
The water drips on my flower bed as I walk past it.
The unhappy Ken became really happy. And from then on, the older woman was always having two happy Kens with her.
So before the older woman had one happy Ken and one unhappy Ken, from now on, once she explained that the water doesn't get wasted, actually as she's walking with that leaking can, it's watering the flower bed. Now, from then on, she had two happy Kens. Do you see how the complicated story, a Chinese story, you can make into 4 pictures or 3 pictures yourself. Produce the video, the audio underneath it, you narrated the thing, and it's a lovely story. And the children can look at it and wow, what an example of how to create a story in a simple way. So they heard it, but they heard the story, and then you can rewind it back and basically show them how the cover book of a Chinese story looks like. So the cover book of a Chinese story has what? Chinese ingredients. I made them up. Look, it was created for someone, whoever, I don't remember. It's for teaching Mandarin in Canberra. I created that. But for children, you can think of some other indices. Like you can find of, whatever, little Chinese woman there or whatever, your imagination. All right, so I'll just drop this here. So that's a happy Ken. Cinderella will have a particular, you go there, it will have a particular cover and so on. So what people do, people create covers. When do people create cover books? When they have a book. Why do they create a cover book? But you can see how they are supported. Children can think. Do you see the lion and the mouse? Have you ever been on that page? This is funny too. One of our students did that. This is so funny. She got her children to record the story. So do you see this thing here, the speaker? So when you click the speaker, you hear children say, the lion and the mouse. And then, look at this. We've got marvelous students at this university. Right? It's what love creates, having fun, love for life and for children, right? And they start creating things. That's very nice. But what do we see? The children have a book, they read the book, and they can play it. And there's a cover. So what are we learning? What people do, people create books. Sometimes those books are online, like the Tale of Two Pots, it's online, like the Lion and the Mouse is online. But how do we know it's a book? It has a particular format. So a book which you buy in the shop has a format, and the book which is online has a different format. But what do they share? They say, hey, we're for children. Click here and there's a great story. It has to have particular patterns that you recognize that it's a story and it's for children. Right? So what do people do? They create books when they create books? When they want to produce something in print or when they want to put something online. Why do people create books to tell the story and so on? And then you go through the same pattern of exercises to explore the cover book. So what people do, they put book covers on the books. When do they do it? When do they put it? As the first thing. Right? The book cover is not at the end of a book or in the middle of a book, it's right the first thing, right? So when children created this little story using the speech-to-text facility, for example, now you can show to them we need the book cover. All right. Make sure, again, your resources are multicultural and so on. Book cover has a title. And if your children can't spell, what do? You make them work it out. An avatar is just a tool. It's not the only tool I will show you, but it's one of the great tools. And so first they can do it individual, then in pairs, then in groups. They can reach an agreement. Now this is a great thing. We have looked at it, but this is not what I wanted to do. Okay. What I wanted to do is actually use one of our systems we had. So what did we have? Avatar, we had the speech to text. And then what else did we have? Text to speech. We had... anyway, we can go there. We will do it. So speed reader. Remember speed reader? So children have produced through the avatar and whatever they created their title, so we type it, right? So we type it, a cake, no, birthday cake. What else? What other title could be? Monsters, I don't know, whatever. Then what you do, you can actually make children this, and I think that there's particular, you can, it actually reads them very quickly. Yeah, come on. Something is not working. Anyway, the idea is that as the program, as you click play, displays the different titles, one after another, you want the children to scream it out and read it out aloud. What a different way of reading, doing the, what do you call this, chorus reading. Children worked on it, their titles, some of them know how to read it because that's their title, and we are reading each other's titles together in a chorus. Ownership, power, all of this, all these positive emotions are in place, as opposed to displaying a text of a story. Now we're gonna read Lion and the Mouse together. And I am not saying there is no room for it, you just have to identify the room. So do you remember how I said milk it? We're still doing the book cover, right? But we're doing it in many different ways in order to improve their literacy skills, their spelling, but not with spelling cards and all of that stuff that actually, scientifically speaking, it's not working. All your flashcards and everything, it's been a long time ago said it doesn't work. But, you know, you've heard it, you're going to use it, so please do. But it's a completely different way. Children actually worked out the title, they worked out the page, they worked out the title, and now we actually make them read together and say to each other and read it out as a chorus. Completely different activity. A completely different activity. All right. And it's with technology. It's cool. And we wrote it on the interactive board, and then, you know, we pressed this and it just...
Okay, so you see
What did I have here?
what's the goal?
Oh.
The goal is to actually...
All right.
So
now we
the
stop
text.
that. I had the different text. Okay, other activities. Right, so just to ensure that we know how to spell our cover, our titles on our cover book, why not do stupid things like those spelling games? Right? So you don't tell them whether they got it right or wrong with the avatar. You can actually, rather than go to the, before you go to those reading as a chorus, together in chorus, you can actually start doing some spellings. And that's very good. And I'll show you some different spellings that are very interesting. This one is a good game. I tell you why. Dyslexic children, ESL children have problem with discrimination, right? It's quite nice. You can't hear it because it's talking to my headphones, but when you hear it on the...
Bite.
So it's a bite, and you have to now find the matching word for bite.
Bat.
But it's bat, so it's wrong pair. So that's bite.
Bite.
That's
bat.
Bat. Now I'm Polish. Bat and bed, same, sounds to me exactly the same, right? So not anymore, but it did in the past. So They exercise spatial memory because they know it's
bite,
bite. Now they're looking for
Bert,
bite bird. Wrong.
boot,
Boot.
boat,
Boat. Do you see what I'm saying? This is teaching them discrimination. Uh,
boat,
so
bite,
this is not
bat,
so much spelling as hearing. You're working with hearing, but you can write these things on the whiteboard. You can ask children to write it. You can use avatar. You can run this program and an avatar on the interactive board, and actually these words being said by the avatar as well, and see whether what this guy says is the same as the avatar says. Milk it. It sounds like the whole bloody activity of creating a title is going to take 6 hours. So what? You got the whole term. But you can see how these exploratory activities enable children to ask questions of themselves. It's not like, oh, we got the title right now, we can move on to creating now. Once upon a time, there was a tree, right? No, milk it. What else is in the title that you can actually, that you can help children to ask questions of themselves? Can they hear it? Can they connect spelling and hearing? But as part of this title activity, not as an exercise in and of itself. Now, I would strongly also recommend that you didn't hear it because you couldn't hear through the speakers, but with the lion and the mouse, what the children also did, they found somewhere on the internet the roaring of the lion, so it's there. Now, I will have you know that dyslexic children, and dyslexia doesn't mean all black, there's a whole range of dyslexic skills, right? Can't discriminate between male female voices, between female of a mother and the female voice of a sister. They have these discriminatory problems. Include things. Was it a dog or was it a lion? I mean, there are sounds like this on the internet. Was it a violin or was it a guitar? Right? And then you can actually take a bit of a sound and put it as part of the cover book of the audio book. Just like the lion story has a little bit of a noise there. So after you took them through discriminatory exercises, man or a woman, young woman, old woman, dog or lion, so you teach them, there's a pedagogy there. But what children think is they're looking for the right sound to put for their cover book, for their book cover. And this is called, you're talking to 7 or 5 or 8-year-olds. You can, you play with them, but your play is creating conditions for them to explore their own powers and expand them. So you see pedagogy, they see fun. They see purpose as well, because it's going to go, they pick a sound and they put it on their thing. Now, when you create your learning resource, for me, I don't expect you to actually be able to do all the, how would you put it on the audiobook, how would you do it online yourself and all of that. I don't expect you to do it, but I do expect that you find actually games. I want to see those games. For many reasons, one of them is that a lot of times you find new games and I steal them from you. If you go to Anja Lyon website, which but you all have probably access to the Education Hub website, where I have links to a million of games. A lot of these games I got from my own personal collection. All right. So this is another discriminatory game. This one is discriminatory game. Between just simple thing, and you do get the voice, but they do read it, so that's really good. This is another cooking game, or the same cooking game, I don't know. Anyway, so the idea here was that if they get the title, you actually then reinforce whether we got the spelling right through these games, and then we put the final thing on the whiteboard with the titles. Once we agreed the avatar reads it well and we agree that this is a good way of spelling, then we put it on this thing and on that speed reader, and we read it as a chorus together. So we all know which titles of books we're creating. How to begin a story. Again, story has a beginning. What people do. when they write the book, the story has a beginning. When? In the beginning. Why? Why does the story have a beginning? Any idea? Stupid question, but honestly, hardly anyone can answer. Why does the book have a beginning? It actually doesn't give you focus. It actually creates an atmosphere. The focus is the next thing, which comes after once upon a time. There was a house. There was a witch. Right? So the witch is the focus. But once upon a time or whatever, it's the rhythm. It's the atmosphere. So the big, you see, it's not simple. So these questions which I'm asking you, the what, why, when, and whatever, and how, is for you to start making children think critically. They ask themselves, just like I did it to you. Why does the book have a story? And they will say, to begin. Then you actually click on those different pictures with them, and you know where you're going. You're going there. You're going to show them the emotion behind the beginning. How does it feel? Right? So in that sense, you're teaching them to explore their emotion, to see the rhythm and the feeling, the atmosphere that the beginning creates. But what children do, they need to learn all of that. So why does the book have a beginning? Well, I don't know. Why does it? Blah, blah, blah. We'll explore, and how did it make you feel? Mystery. You expand their vocabulary, mystery, and all of that. So, and in the bed, out of the bed, how did it make you feel? Like running, like exploring things and so on. So different beginnings for different purposes. And then it has a focus, once upon a time, and then the focus. So you explore it and you name it and you find out how different all these resources, how they show you how to start a story. And I would really, if I were you, I would find resources that have not only a culturally differentiated, but also have a different beginning. So they're not all once upon the time. Why? Because you want children to be creative. You want them to mix things. You don't want all of them to be once upon a time. They will be, but some of them might actually come up with different solutions when you explore different ways of starting a story and discuss what, why, and how. And then once you have what, which is the beginning, when, in the beginning, why, and then introduces you to the climate, to the atmosphere of the whole thing. How do they do it? Well, let's see how they did it in different stories. And once they have different options, and they can actually compare how different beginnings made them feel, they can, when they create their own story, they can then go back to the speech to text and change it. Because the idea is what they created initially as their little story was just a draft. You know how we create drafts, but when we work with our children, they have to have the right thing, and then we edit it, and then we just give it to their parents. That's just a nonsense. Patronizing. Behavioristic. They do whatever they did, and you don't really care what they did, because actually now you, through those 5 lessons, you take them through the process of actually exploring what they did and how they could make it better. Not in class, now we will do editing. I mean, that's just so boring. And how are they going to know how to edit it? Oh, because one of the peers will know. What about the other 20 that are sitting there? Oh, they will love it. No. They're going to play with each other's hairs and tickle each other and, draw. So you can see how this pattern of what, when, and why, and how is repeated through every lesson as pointers for you to know how to work with all these resources, which resources to include, what are you going to point to children, how are you going to explore. You let them talk like Ockerman did, but now they can compare. They have tools to talk about. In Ockerman's case, they had a book to talk about, right? And I'm not saying that Ockerman's book a methodology was the best methodology. What it did show is that children can talk about stuff. So give them tools, give them something that they can actually use as things to use to talk about. Because when the only thing they have is their experience, and when they don't read at home or they have very limited experiences, they sit quiet in your classroom. Oh, by the way, when I went to this symposium, we had one of the speakers who was a guy in medical studies, and they were thinking how to make particular people who don't take injections or don't take medicine, how to make them actually look after themselves. And he says, look, I got this Vygotsky thing. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's going to be really, really a disaster, right? So I'm sitting there. And look what we did. And you know what they did that the experiment showed? You know the Ockerman story when children were talking to each other. The only way that actually, the only context that made a difference to the way how people were dealing with their diseases was when they actually did, the teacher was not there or just sat around, when they actually talked to each other. And I'm thinking like, I could be difficult and say, where's Vygotsky here? But that wasn't difficult. I just let it go because, you know, all I care is that they have an outcome. They can put any name underneath it. Who cares? As long as they have an outcome. You know, if I tell Bakhtin, then I have to, then they now have to reread Bakhtin or read Bakhtin. What's the point? Call it Vygotsky. In reality, you got actually Bakhtin in a dialogic inquiry. That's what you got. People sharing their own, exchanging resources. It works when you are 50. Or 60, when you have a disease and a long experience in life, you have tools to share. But when you're 5, how do you know how the book cover looks like? Even you didn't know why have a beginning in the story, right? The complex things. They are so, as complex as the word play. We all know what it means. We just don't know what it means. You know, play is play, but what does it mean? Well, we don't know. So these are the sort of ways how the story starts. So you have the speakers here, and the children are reading it, and all you have to do is to focus on one day. But there was a reason why I put it in here, because okay, so it's one day, but when you actually run it, I would like you to use the typewriter. Remember the typewriter mode here? So that children can actually get a pretty good sense that it goes from left to the right, and they can read it as the thing is unraveling itself. It's a very good organizing methodology for, I don't know why it's not showing here. I could have sworn that I included it here, but maybe I, at the end at 11 p.m., copied and pasted the wrong slide. But I will make, you do have the French slides because I told you I have uploaded them on the discussion board. So if that's what I'm saying. Not always use the book. Sometimes use the book, which is online, but then have a look. Use also a PowerPoint or something that actually does the trick of a typewriter when the text gets developed from left to right. So what I'm saying is, typically in schools, the teachers who are really proletarian minded and all of this, all about labor and all about equality, what they do, they expose children to commercial books. Can you see consistency here? But what I'm saying is, commercial book is created for particular reason, but if you have a pedagogy, sometimes you have to use tricks and different ways of presenting the text that pedagogically makes sense. So the text is not unraveling in a commercial book from left to right. So what do teachers do? They put their finger and go left, right. Why? You can have it on the screen as well. Just does it itself. And all children read from the beginning. Oh, once, you know, whatever. I've got these two stories of this is the YouTube, the original story from which I got the two-pot story. You can have a look how they start. So they don't start with once upon a time. I don't know why. I have a particular. I have a. You know how we all, in order to survive, we stereotype. So there are two cultures in China, but I think that I don't know whether both of them are pragmatic. But there's a pragmatic aspect to the Chinese culture, because I have a lot of Chinese students and friends, and I find them always very pragmatic, very much like so what, right? And the two-pot story doesn't start with once upon a time, but says, I can't remember what it says, but something starts already with a woman who was a farmer, right? Straight away with the focus, not so much atmosphere, but the focus. Right? The focus is the second. So you can see now that I'm absolutely killing the idea of there being the beginning, middle, and end, right? It's just total nonsense, means doesn't explain anything. So first we have the atmosphere, and then we have a focus. And this story of two pots literally starts with the focus, doesn't start with the atmosphere. So we explore it, then we can type our own and test it, how to spell it and all of that. Please do. And I don't know, you can do anything with it, I don't know. Say it and see how it's written. Now with rhymes, some of you will be using, okay, the question I had, someone sent me a question, which was, should we be using just one text? Well, it depends what you want to use it for, right? The answer, though, is the meaning is not in the text. And this is, we're moving a little bit further now from early childhood to middle school and so on. That's because it's not that early childhood is not to use this concept, but it actually, it's a foundational concept in literacy. The meaning is relational. In semiotics, it is called deferred, right? So you know what's the cat because you've seen a dog. You know the cat is not a dog because you've seen the dog and you've seen the horse and you've seen the mouse and you've seen blah, you've seen blah. Ad infinitum, potentially forever. Right? So can I use one text? I don't know what you want to do with it. I mean, using one text means nothing to me. What I want to do is students to actually be engaged in a project. So when you actually explore a particular text to make a case, like the story of two, you can see how many actually stories we have covered so far. We've covered lion. Children can listen to it. They only learned from it a couple of words of spelling so far, but they've done the book. They've done the story of two pots. Then they've done something else. There's a lot of reading happening there. But at this very moment, it's an expansion of stories from which we get the bits and pieces we need for a particular thing. And when children want to stay with a story longer, you stay with them with that story for a longer time. But you know, it is about project. It's not about doing the book. So with rhymes, some of you will be using rhymes. So I've given you some exercises here for rhymes and particular helpful exercises. So basically, these are sort of games that you could use for when you want to actually children to do something in rhymes, for children to explore that there is a rhyme, because they have no idea. So things rhyme. Where do they rhyme? On the last syllable. Not last word, but last syllable. How do children know that? When you give them the entire book, which is called Caterpillar, I believe that caterpillar is rhyming. So by the time they get to the rhyme, they have to read all the 5 words before it. And they have no interest in it, other than the pictures. Introduce them first to the rhyme. What also text stories have, they have some sort of sense of appreciation about them, don't we? So rhyme is not a simple thing. So let's have a look. So you can actually start the rhyming activities first with games that explore the rhyme. Where is the rhyme? And then you can take, how do we find these rhymes in books? You can take your caterpillar or something else that children have done or might do one day and have a look in the text. Where is the rhyme? How it shows on the page. And you can put this page now on the interactive board so children can click and you have your voice or some other children's voice reading each word. Remember how on PowerPoint you can actually put a sound to each word. And then they can see which bits are actually not only which bits in the sentence are rhyming. So we can just check the ends, and then we can see how these ends fit with the rest of the sentence. Now, there will be also, we can count how many syllables are in each of the lines of a poem or of a text, because they will be constant, right? So they're learning syllables, but actually what we tell them they are learning is the rhythm. How does the, why do people have rhymes? How does it make you feel? So you can actually explore all this. How does it make you feel? So you got this song, and an old rocking chair. I've been around the world a couple of times or maybe more, right? How does it make you feel? It's singing, it's funny, it's good. And there's a story here rhyming, another story rhyming. Why do people do it? Well, because it's fun, and I don't know. I don't know why I put Woolworths there. I can't remember anymore. So you see how here I can show how do people do this? When, hen. So you can explore first those ends before you actually start worrying about the rest of the text. And you can actually see time and country are not rhyming. Though I can't say exactly when they lived away in the country, a small little red hen. And you can play with children. You can, for each word they create, you can put a square, but write the last word that rhymes, or whatever. The point I'm making here is that if you want to do the rhymes, and you want children to create rhymes, first introduce them gently, just like we introduce children gently to an activity of storytelling, or like we gave them different stories or different sort of games so they could actually get some ideas what to write their story about. And the same with rhymes. If there's rhymes are fun, we'll explore what is a rhyme first through different games. And then we can go to the nursery rhyme and just pick, start analyzing it in terms of what, when, why, and how. And that what, when, why, and how are very important. I would love to see them in every lesson you create, because they are focal points for discussion and for you to make sure that you actually included tools enabling children to see what to compare and contrast relationships which matter to a particular lesson. All the students, so I pretty much covered that now. I'm not going to touch anything else because you pretty much know. You know that the story, if children create an audiobook, so they've got the cover, they've got the title, you know that to milk it, you know how to explore it in relation to those different pointers, what, when, why, and how. You know to milk it in a sense that you expand it through different rhythmic or through different spelling or through different activities, so that children actually get the richer literacy experience from those things. So once you finished your focus, then you go to what's the context, right? So it's an atmosphere, focus, and then context. The Cinderella was the poor girl and her mother died and her father remarried. It's not the middle of the story, it's a context. And then the drama comes in. The mother was bad. Stepmother is bad. Hates her. Right? So there's the evil. Every story has an evil in it. Some of my students call it complication, but I don't call it complication. It's just a sort of this drama element, or sort of negative element. And then the next thing happens, maybe the next thing we could call drama, which is the problem. The problem is that she wants the prince but she can't marry the prince and all that story, right? It's a problem. And then we have a solution, what happened. So it's like 6, 7 different stages, many more than you have lessons to create. So your lessons can be about the first 5 or the first 3. You don't have to do for the whole Cinderella thing. I mean, for the whole sequence. The contract is to do 5 lessons, so we do just 5 lessons. But I want you to think. I want you to think about the structure of a story in a critical way, not middle, beginning, and end, because that's just so low. Okay, so something happened to my connection. No? My connection is running. Well, that's sad, isn't it? Look, the connection is not running. How am I gonna get the connection back? My computer says it is running. My telephone says it is running. But my thing is not showing it. Anyway, that said, because I really wanted you to have a look at this PowerPoint. Again, it's created. That's the one about discourse in science. I want you to have a look how you can actually do literacy and science together. Joanna Humphreys, she produced this assignment for EAL 201. I used to teach it until I didn't want it anymore for whatever reason. So you can have a look what different resources she used and what different aspects of the scientific text she focused on to compare and contrast scientific text with a newspaper article or with some other article, right? They don't look the same. Cinderella and a journal look different. So she shows the relationships. I'm not saying I'm sure she got a HD for it. I'm not saying this is a perfect assignment. Probably it is. I can't remember. There will be still elements of, high schooling coming through. But it's a great way of indicating how compare and contrast and an exploratory pedagogy actually makes a difference. Because what's the option? You pull out the scientific journal and you say, well, this is how the journal looks like. It's got the beginning, middle, and the end. Oh, that's inspiring. So that's Cinderella. And then you say, yes, but the beginning here is an abstract. Then the middle is the story and the end is conclusion. Well, that's really good. Now they have to memorize the genre of Cinderella has a beginning, middle, and end, which has once upon a time, then the middle and the end, and the journal. And you will be teaching them to memorize every genre this way. It's not multisensory. Human beings are multisensory beings. They need to observe, perceive, and feel things in more than one way to make a meaning out of it. So what Joanna did was really, really lovely. This link works, except it doesn't work on my computer. This very second. See my name anywhere here? So it should work now. So it's lovely, all that stuff here. To distinguish, did you see it? I mean, I have gone distinguish, recognize, know, understand, translate, create. You can see how many outcomes. She could have probably produced more of them, but you can see how many out. It's not like I'm gonna. And look how global they are. Distinguish, recognize, know. They're not like match last syllable with the first syllable. None of that sort of So she's got this. What's in an? Let's have a look how it works. See it? Isn't it cute? To compare. Look how simple it is. Didn't take a genius to do it. To show differences. So that's what I was trying to show to you. How sort of simple visual play with the PowerPoint, you can actually show children how to, students. Differentiate. So one is scientific report and the other one is, I don't know. Oh, it just shows where the title is, right? So the title is here. The subtitle, scientific thing has headings. It's got text. It's got table. And this one is a newspaper. Title, headings, no headings. Short paragraph, no short paragraph. Long paragraph, table, no table. Photograph instead, and a caption. Bit different, right? So that's a lovely way of making children experience text in more than one way. Now this one, we're coming back again to this one. Remember how I said that each genre is a collection of other genres? Because otherwise, how could we speak otherwise? Where do you get your sentences from? Oh, Anya, this is a lecture. So you're using sentences from the lecture genre. I don't use sentences from the lecture genre. I know the genre of the lecture. It's a particular grid. It's a particular framework. But I'm free in it. Every lecturer teaches differently. Why is that? Because they draw on different genres. They hold the main principle, main structure the same, which is I sit here, you sit there, and there are some particular aspect that you could identify as lecture. And some of us push it so far that you wouldn't even identify those bits as lectures. Right? So if they are more innovative. But every genre has, so for example, we were discussing Mr. Bean. What does he do? He mixes the genre. So the genre of interview in this particular interview that I recall I used from YouTube, he's mixing he's interviewing Elton John, and he brings in genre of, he asked him what was wrong with being called John Elton. And he drags that bloody stupid question forever, right? Until Elton John is just absolutely livid. I mean, Elton John do, right? But so why is he saying what was wrong with John Elton? Because at school you are John Elton, right? So he brings the John Elton from the school. You always know what's John Elton. In passport you are John Elton. Why on the stage you are Elton John? What was wrong with John Elton? So you can see how simple switch, bringing something from the genre of school, legalities, formalities, and mixing it with artistic expression or artistic nickname in an interview created fun. So he's still within the genre of a sketch, comedy sketch, but he brings in elements from outside to show how artistic expression and formal expressions are not the same. And it's funny. Like I said, sticking your nose in the middle of a church, in the middle of a mess, right? It's funny when we say it because we know he's bringing the private, personal, and unhygienic, pretty much, into television screen and also the church, right? Where you should be all clean, polite, and praying rather than thinking of something like what's in your nose. So every genre is a collection of other genres, and the way you work with them depends whether you want to create humor or what atmosphere you want to create and what frames of reference you want to bring in. That's very important because when your children produce or students produce, as I said in the beginning, produce an audiobook or some other product, then you look on what frames of references did they play. What did they use? What frames of reference did they engage in order to make this resource rich, good, responding to a large number of outcomes in the curriculum? And you can expect it now because you took them through lessons but enable them to explore how these outcomes work. So cultural differentiation, well, the children explored Aboriginal books and explored Lapland children's books, and so they had element to draw. And now you as a teacher, you intelligently engage in the resource to see what kinds of elements children actually drew on. And that teaches you to work with a student. It's a skill that hardly anyone has. We have one assignment by one of our students that I checked that assignment in the way I check everyone else's assignment, and I gave it a credit. And I felt sorry because I knew there was more in that assignment than that. But it just, the way I check every other assignment, it just was a credit. But then I thought, okay, well, why don't I just relook at it and work with a student? Because it read almost like a novel. And I thought, okay, I'll just give it distinction minus. Minus because some elements I felt I still wanted it a bit more academic for this particular purpose, but I give a distinction because the things were there, they were just integrated differently, as if you did in a novel. And that's how you learn to actually read the student, as opposed to read what you expect always. So what do I have here? Identify the sketch by identifying first the ceremony. The genre is very often called the ceremony, the ceremonial grid, the sequence that is the things for the genre that are requested. But they're very rudimentary usually. What comes in is it's that play on other genres, how you integrate them, that's actually the content. So students can actually analyze what makes this actually sketch fun. What does this person draw? What does he draw on? Also, you can use these concepts of cultural, social, symbolic capital and see whether this sketch is actually funny for Aboriginal people. Polish people. My mother saw Mr. Bean on the plane coming to Australia. She was just slightly older than I am now. She thought all the people who were laughing were just crazy. I mean, what did it tell you about my mother? Well, she just was displaying what Polish people have very strongly in the culture. We're smart, others may not be. It's very strong in the Polish culture, or was when I was there. We're smart, others might not be. And the response my mother gave to Mr. Bean was not about cultural inclusion. It was, they might not be as smart as I am. I mean, so it's kind of coherent with that sort of attitude. I'm not saying that all Poles are like that, or nowadays might have changed. But the Poland I know of 30 years behind was like that. Very much up themselves. So have a look whether this joke would go very well in other cultures. Examine it. And then maybe you could ask people to rewrite this joke. So it'd be funny for their culture. It'd be very funny. I have no idea how to do it in Polish. But then what would happen, you as a teacher, you'd have to provide them with resources and lessons divided to what, why, when, and how. But enable now to compare how particular genres and particular effects in the storyline of a genre are done in Poland, for example, or in other countries. So you compare, you work with Mr. Bean and you compare how this particular, so what was the beginning, how the story starts. So it's the atmosphere. How is the atmosphere set up for a joke in British jokes or in Poland or in French comedy sketches? Right, so how is it set up? Then the focus, how's the focus set up? So the same storyline that we were using for children's stories, we could use those points that sequence ourselves again, but now for a sketch and see how these different stages are done across different countries. I'm not saying culture is a country, but for the sake of country broadcasting sketches on their television, they have to be understood by the people who actually receive it. So French way of maybe focusing the comedy sketch or even creating at first the atmosphere and then the focus might be done differently than in England. And I'm sure it is. And definitely it's different in Poland. That's what made my mother say Mr. Bean is just stupid. And anybody who laughs at Mr. Bean has no idea. I mean, they must be stupid too. And when I heard it, And when she told me what movie was, I was laughing. And my mother said, my daughter is with them. Lost my daughter. Right? Because what cultural inclusion then happens is that by compare and contrast, what you create as a teacher is an opportunity for children to expand their expectations. And all of a sudden, they no longer just laugh at Polish jokes. They start actually appreciating the British joke and the French joke and whatever else. You might even come up with French sketches translated into English. I don't know how that would translate. But you can only work with what you have. So you rewrite it. This could be now. Okay. So I'm absolutely delighted that I managed to cover 77 slides in 1.5 hours. Obviously, so that movie I'll be finishing now, and I'll put it on YouTube as soon as I have access to a reliable connection. On the Learn line, you have different games that I created over the years. So you have this PowerPoint and also some other PowerPoints I uploaded last night at 11 p.m. so that you could actually have them. And they are resources. They are just like a game. So they don't necessarily have reading activity, but they could be part of a reading activity somewhere. So I'm just going to close it here before my computer closes without saving that movie.